2,500 casualties in the first 15 minutes.
You can't imagine dreams like that. You can't imagine.
The year is 1944. It's crazy. I never imagined I'd find myself here, in the heart of a war that's reshaping the world. So much has changed, and there's no turning back.
By this point, Hitler's war machine had raged across continents for 5 relentless years, leaving cities in ruins, nations in peril, and millions of lives forever changed. However, as the tide of World War II slowly changed, the Allies had begun to fight their way back.
The Allies have already pushed across North Africa, and now we're fighting in Italy. A good portion of the German army is tied up in the Eastern Front. But how do you make a bigger tactical problem for the adversary? You have to open up a second front. And June 6, 1944 represents the beginning of that second front.
This is the day for which free people long have waited. This is D-Day.
The largest amphibious invasion in history is underway. The Allies have one goal: to liberate Europe from Nazi control.
So this is a critical moment in the course of the war. It's a do or die moment. There's a lot riding on this. If the Allies can't pull this landing off, it'll be another year or more before they can try and stage another landing to try and create that second front.
But this moment, this thunderous clash on the shores of Normandy, didn't happen by chance. Behind closed doors, long before the first boots hit the beach, the real battle began. A battle of strategy, timing, and precision. At the planning table sat an unlikely unit.
Many people don't know that 5th Corps was the first headquarters to start the planning for D-Day, for the landings. They were in England before 1st Army began, and Eisenhower's headquarters was a brand new headquarters where it really wasn't ready yet to start. So they begin the initial planning.
At the heart of 5th Corps' role in D-Day was not just its position on the battlefield, but the leadership guiding it. And that leadership came from a quiet, steady hand. Not a household name, not a West Point graduate, but a soldier, scholar, who had already shaped the war from behind a desk and was now called to lead from the front. His name was General Leonard T. Gerow.
So General Gerow knew what he was facing. He came out of the War Plans Division in the Pentagon. He went there in 1940, so he was part of original war plans and both for the Pacific and for Europe. He went and took over the 29th Infantry Division, which was one of the 2 divisions that fought underneath 5th Corps and stormed the beaches at Omaha Beach. He knew what he was getting into.
Like any battlefield leader, Gerow has his, detractors. There are people who have good things and negative things to say. But General Gerow had a habit of being at the point of friction and understanding, being able to visualize the battlefield and being able to apply the right assets at the right time.
With General Gerow and staff from 5th Corps at the planning table, details outlining Operation Neptune could commence. Operation Neptune, the code name for the amphibious assault phase of Operation Overlord. This operation involves intricate coordination of naval, air, and land forces, aiming to establish a foothold in Normandy and break through Hitler's Atlantic Wall. Within this monumental effort, Omaha Beach played a pivotal role, positioned at the western end of the main landing areas. It was crucial for establishing a sustainable supply line for the Allied advance.
For Omaha Beach specifically, each of the landing beaches has a purpose. This is the western end of the main landing areas. And then there's, of course, Utah Beach, which the purpose for that is to cut across the Costanza Peninsula and then ultimately seize the ports at Cherbourg. But for Omaha Beach, it's one of two planned artificial harbors that will sustain the Allied efforts until ports can be secured to sustain the Allied force.
The meticulous planning of Operation Neptune fell heavily on the shoulders of Fifth Corps. Every aspect was scrutinized, from the synchronization of naval bombardments to the precise timing of infantry landings.
So the overall part of the overall plan is the Allies wanted to land at a time when the illumination factors and the tides were in synchronous with what they want to do. Up to this point, Allied landings happened at high tide, waning tide. And this was different because the Allies were going to land at low tide with a rising tide. The intent was they would be able to see the beach obstacles, which again, something different. It's going to be a lot more beach for them to cross, but they'll be able to see the beach obstacles that are in front of them.
The success of D-Day relied not only on strategic decisions, but on the seamless unification of countless moving parts.
Well, anytime you talk about Allied operations, they're complex, right? So for D-Day, not just Omaha Beach, but D-Day, it was 12 different Allied countries that came together in order to make that operation work. And so there's a lot of patience. There's a lot of communication, overly communicating. I think that's a huge part of that.
But while generals and strategists mapped out the invasion, men from every corner of America, from different walks of life, found themselves on the same path at the same time. Fresh-faced students, factory workers, and farmhands stood shoulder to shoulder, embarking on a journey that little did they know would change the course of history. They came from places like New York and California and everywhere in between, carrying nothing but a uniform, a rifle, and the weight of something bigger than themselves. Among them was Jake Larson, a farm boy from the small town of Owatonna, Minnesota. It was a time of jukeboxes in corner cafes, double features on Saturday nights, and baseball on the radio every Sunday afternoon.
Life on the farm was plain, hard work. Every morning started at 6 a.m. with hot cocoa, then straight to chores. We milked 30 cows by hand, fed the cattle, and cleaned the stalls. That's how we started and ended each day.
At school, Jake picked up a skill that few young men bothered with: typing. It wasn't tough, it wasn't glamorous, but it came easy to him. And years later, that small decision would change his life.
I only took the class because I could take another elective. I fell right into it. I could type 50 words a minute. Never thought I'd actually use it or that this simple skill would save my life.
In 1938, Jake was just 15 years old, too young to drive, too young to vote. But that didn't stop him from making one of the most impactful decisions of his life. With his cousin Chick by his side, Jake walked into the local National Guard recruiting office and claimed to be 18.
I said, "Sir, we'd like to join the National Guard." And I'm looking at him, 18, I'm thinking, yes, 18. He says, what year were you born? Whoa, wait a minute here. I was born in 1922, but I had to lose 3 years from that. So, 1919, sir. He says, sign right here.
No questions asked. He was in. He joined the Minnesota National Guard as an infantryman with the 135th Infantry Regiment, 34th Infantry Division, the Red Bulls.
Jake Larson is a very interesting case because he actually has a very rare skill at the time. He can type, which for a man is very unusual. Again, it's often considered a woman's thing to type, secretaries. But Jake could type. He had enlisted in the National Guard and had worked his way up. But again, he was discovered that he could type, so he's put in the core planning element.
It's crazy, and I'm coming from an infantry company and going into Corps, 5th Corps. They never get anybody from an infantry company.
Jake's rare skill with the typewriter quickly set him apart. Instead of remaining just another soldier on the front lines, he found himself in the heart of 5th Corps' planning team, working on the G3 staff.
Jake Larson served as basically as an operations sergeant in the 5th Corps G3. So as a member of the G3, he was privy to all the war plans.
Every person that landed on Omaha Beach on D-Day came through these fingers.
Jake Larson would have seen every TO as they're doing that planning. So he would, what we kind of also call today a tip fit, a force flow. He would have seen that force flow. He would have been part of that planning, but he would not have done it alone. He would have had, the officers and other soldiers of the operations center and other planners and other headquarters above and below would have had a word in all the overall plans. But he would have seen and handled every one of those plans and every one of the TO, the organization of every one of those units.
That's how he found himself handling some of the most classified information in the entire operation.
I was rated top secret bigot. I was entitled to anything that was secret.
For months, Jake's world was one of paper, names, numbers, unit placements, and even landing times. It was quiet work, methodical. Every keystroke meant something, even if he didn't know what it was. But no matter how many pages were typed or how carefully the plans were laid out, there was no preparing for the moment the operation became real.
While we were still on the command ship, all hell broke loose. Biggest cannon that's ever made were on these ships, and they were shooting in, trying to get through the barricades that all the cement obstacles that the Germans were hiding behind. And they were shooting point blank over us. And while they were shooting over us, the Germans were shooting at them. It was deafening. And it was like the 4th of July. It was still dark in the morning, and the sky was lighting up. And I remember all you could hear was boom, boom.
Jake's role had always been clear: stay focused, follow orders, and keep the documents moving. He typed the assignments that would send others into the fight. But now, the lines he once typed were no longer just orders. They were reality. He wasn't watching from the sidelines anymore. He was being called forward. He set the typewriter aside and slung his rifle over his shoulder.
I'm calling down that rope net, 74 pounds of gear on me, and watching that boat try to get as close as it can. And that boat is going with the waves. It was rough, 4 foot in the air, and then dropping 4 foot, then back up again. So we had to contend with that. And I was the first one in there, so I landed right side of the pilot, the 17-year-old Navy boy. So when he loaded up 30 of us in there, he pulled up and was taking us to our drop-off position, which was supposed to be waistline. Well, we missed that a couple foot.
The landing craft rocked hard in the waves, rising and falling as it pushed steadily toward the shore. Ahead of them, smoke, chaos, and a beach they'd only seen in maps. Behind them, the roar of naval guns and the open sea. When the ramp dropped, the war was no longer out there somewhere. It was right there in front of them. Every step forward could be their last.
And everybody's walking in line with one another. You step in each other's footsteps. So I'm walking behind them, and we're receiving small arms fire from the ground. I was more afraid of stepping on a landmine than the bullets whizzing by us.
The German defenses at Omaha Beach were pretty extensive. It was not the most intensely defended place on the entire coastline. That was reserved mostly for the ports, like Calais. where they expected the landings to come. But like I said, the Germans had invested a lot of resources in building reinforced bunkers. Bunkers also defended by trenches that supported the bunker systems. 1 million mines across the beachhead. All sorts of obstacles, Belgian gates, tetrahedrons. They had ramps to build to overturn landing craft. So the beach is just littered with obstacles for the American soldiers to overcome. Interlocking fields of fire, artillery, every imaginable weapon system that they can bring to bear is on that beach.
As the chaos unfolded on the beach, those in command were already receiving the first signs that the landing wasn't going as planned. Back aboard the ship, General Gerow was watching the operation unfold in real time, and the reports coming in were grim.
The actual invasion and the landings on the beaches started at 6:30 a.m. sharp. At 6:51, General Gerow got a message, and that was the first wave is foundering.
So 5th Corps on Omaha Beach, again, this is a critical point in the overall plan, is more intensely defended than originally estimated. A German division, the 352nd, had moved into the line shortly before the landings occurred to do counter landing training and drills.
General Omar Bradley very much wanted to call it off and was like, hey, we failed. We're going to just withdraw everybody and we're going to have to figure out another way to do this. And Gerow was calm, provided the leadership, let things continue. But I think he, just like all of us in leadership roles, when you lose a soldier, you take that personally. When you lose 2,500 soldiers in 15 minutes, that's huge. And not knowing if you were going to be successful during that operation, I think that was on his mind.
As General Gerow absorbed the grim reality of what was unfolding on Omaha, men like Jake Larson were running through it, wave by wave, step by step. The beach offered almost no cover. Machine gun fire raked across the sand. The tide dragged in shattered debris and bodies.
Well, it seemed like the landing was an eternity. With all the firing going on above and at you, getting small arms fire from below. I can't describe it any worse than that. And people say, were you scared? I was scared of stepping on a landmine. And that's what I was trying to prevent.
Jake had made it off the boat, but barely. He pushed forward, inching his way through the sand under fire, searching for any cover that might keep him alive.
I had 2 MG-42 machine guns on opposite sides of the cliffs, had me pinned. I got behind a rock burrow there, about 6-7 inches tall, and that protected me. I dug out a cigarette, put it in my mouth. Man, my matches were wet. I sensed the guy to my left. I said, hey, buddy, have you got a match? I got no answer. So I turned my head and looked, and there was no head under the helmet. And at that same instant, it was like his soul was telling me, get up and run right now. So I did. And I no sooner started running than those 2 machine guns started shooting again. They must have stopped to change barrels or put in more ammunition. I don't know, but they couldn't catch up with me, or they couldn't hit me. I was 5'7" at that time. I weighed 120 pounds. And I said, thank God The Germans aren't good at shooting at toothpicks.
I've stood on the top of the ridge at Colville, where the 1st Infantry Division monument. If you ever stand up there at low tide, you'll wonder, how did any soldier get off this beach alive? The fortifications, they have incredible fields of fire. And again, it was a low tide, so there's even more beach for those soldiers to have to cross. The littlest things were able to protect our soldiers. There's what they call the shingle. It's just kind of a little ledge where the tide would wash up rocks. It saved many soldiers' lives. The beach defenses were extensive. Direct fire, indirect fire killed many and wounded many American soldiers. So men had to be put into ad hoc teams, fire teams, squads to go by leaders to go take that objective. So there's a lot of improvisation that happens on the beach.
It was really small unit leadership on the beach that drove the success for 5th Corps on Omaha Beach. It wasn't the detailed plans. The plans got us to a certain point, but once soldiers hit the beach and started taking casualties, that plan went out the window. And so it was really the sergeants, the lieutenants, leading their soldiers to push through those German defenses.
So the soldiers that attacked those beaches were children of the Great Depression. They were no stranger to hardship and deprivation, and they knew what was at risk.
There's going to be casualties, but we're willing to risk that. We had to get this done. We had to relieve the world of this guy called Hitler.
And at that moment, you don't have high-minded ideals like country for Western ideals. You're fighting for your buddy and to survive and to get off that beach.
As far as though getting in, I knew what I had to do after I got there, if I could get there. No, we were trained. You can't drill that into you. Your buddies really become buddies when you depend on each other.
So 5th Corps on D-Day does an excellent job of managing the fight, overcoming adversity, and continuing to apply assets where they needed to happen. The Corps commander is on the scene. He's able to direct the forces from the first day, and that will be the way General Gerow will fight most of the way across Europe. 5th Corps will have a key role in many of the large battles of the Second World War, and D-Day is just the first one.
By the end of the day, after the gunfire had faded and the tide rolled back over the sand, the cost was staggering. Thousands of lives gone in a matter of hours. Each one a son, a husband, a father, a friend. And those who survived carried something with them, something the war never took away.
How is it possible that this all happened to me? How come I made it through? All my buddies are waiting for me. What am I doing here?
"81 years later, the coastline of Normandy still holds the weight of that day.
When you look out at those crosses out there at the American National Cemetery, there's 10,000 different markers out there. And just think about the huge sacrifice. Those are brothers, those are sons, those are husbands that didn't come home. And they were fighting for something they believed in, and that was freedom, and that everybody should have the right to be free. And I think we just need to remember that.
Concrete bunkers cling to the cliffs, worn and weathered, but unmoved, like silent witnesses to what unfolded here. The waves still crash against the shore, steady, unchanging, just like they did that morning. But now, they meet the coastline shaped by sacrifice and marked by memory. And as time carries us forward, the duty to remember and to preserve only grows heavier.
So as an Army historian, we're always looking to try and capture our Army story. And that includes the oral interviews of soldiers like Jake Larson. It's not just the stories of the senior leaders. They're interesting, but we also need to capture the story of the soldiers. They have significant impact on the battlefield. And Jake Larson's an excellent example where this story of one soldier who has an incredible story to tell, who helps plan the D-Day landings with 5th Corps, and then will land on D-Day. And then, oh, by the way, will also participate in the Battle of the Bulge later. An incredible story from Minnesota all the way to the Ardennes, and it's a pretty incredible story.
The mission that began on the beaches of Normandy didn't end with the war. It shaped the alliances we still rely on today, and it set the foundation for the fight we continue. Not with invasion, but with presence, partnership, and deterrence. What started then still matters now.
We're 5th Corps here now to assure our NATO allies and to deter Russian aggression. You know, we were born in 1918 to liberate Europe and restore freedom and democracy in Europe. We came back in World War II to do the same thing, and we're here now to preserve it and ensure that, you know, our European partners and allies enjoy those freedoms and liberties that we have and that democracy has.
Today, 5th Corps stands ready on NATO's eastern flank. From the Baltics to the Black Sea, shoulder to shoulder with our allies and partners. We are where we need to be because of those who came before us. As the United States Army marks 250 years of service, we carry that legacy forward, not as a memory, but as a mission.